Dianne, thanks again. It's great to actually meet you after a couple of years.
Yes.
Now, I must start with this question. Last time we met, you said you're going to go and you're going to even leave your hairdresser behind, Alison, right?
Yes.
So you're going to leave her behind, but tell me, what's going to be in your bag of luxuries that you're going to take?
Luxuries. Oh, I don't think we'll end up being able to take many luxuries, that's for sure. Everything is precious. All of the space and all of the weight. I mean, it costs roughly in Australian dollars about $6,000 per kilogram to send anything to the space station. So you can imagine everything is gold. If I was fortunate enough to bring something personal, I'd probably take something which would have some either emotional connection, so that the luxury would not be because of the price of something, but more its value. And in that instance, it would probably be something that maybe belonged to my mother, or has helped me along my journey.
Right.
That has a very small thing, but would have a physical and emotional connection in some capacity. Yeah. So mum's wedding ring, or even my Aura ring. My sleep tracker.
Yeah.
So lots of little things like that have been a part of a journey towards something. Yeah.
Fantastic. So every time I've actually spoken about this adventure with my friends and colleagues, I mean everybody here that this is going to be a one-way mission, right? And this you're not coming back. Why, right? I mean everybody asks what kind of mentality that you have to go through, but I guess the question is, why are you actually doing this? What's the drive for going on a one-way mission? You're not going to come back. So
yes. Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Why would you leave a perfectly breathable atmosphere to go on Mars?
Yeah.
It's hard to sometimes share with somebody else your own passion towards something. I mean, what you've done in setting up the foundation and so forth, other people think, that's incredible, but why did you start that? Or they might see and appreciate some elements. People have done some extraordinary things in life, and the different pioneering things. Someone's got to do it first. Someone has to set up a foundation first. Someone has to help these children first. Someone has to do something first. And sometimes not everybody can see that pathway, but they see it once you start moving down that pathway, and then they want to contribute in some capacity. So for me, I saw that this extraordinary mission to show that as a united humanity we could share and explore space together, as a united humanity, something which we can't really do as a space agency, astronaut crews and so on, because they're all from one nation only.
Yep.
Whereas Mars One's concept is to have people from different
Got amazing diversity.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really want to explore that. That's the diversity stuff a bit later. But that to be able to do that and then show that not just can we explore and share space together as a united humanity, but that then inspires other people here on Earth. Everybody can connect with that and see that they can see themselves in that. That saying, if you can't see, you can't be it.
Yep.
So all kids will see themselves in this extraordinary group of people who are seeking to do something so remarkable. And for me as well, I'm very passionate about sustainability. And to be able to survive on Mars, we have to be Earth independent. We cannot be reliant on resupply from Mars, not just that $6,000 a kilogram issue, but it's on the 55 million kilometres plus away. Resupply is very difficult, and managing resources there is very, very difficult. Yeah. And we'll be living in a tiny, tiny closed loop where we will see the borders of our closed loop. We have a closed loop on this planet too. We just don't see the boundaries of it. So I thought if we can show that we can live sustainably on Mars, then that means everyone will see that and perhaps emulate that. And perhaps as well, because all the technology will have been invented, developed, tested, scaled up here on this planet first, we'll have already done something here before we even get to Mars. So what a great opportunity that is.
And also talking about the whole journey, because you've gone from selecting 200,000 or initial 200,000, dropped down to 600, now down to 100.
Yes.
And from what I understand, it's going to drop down to 24 in the next...
Between 12 to 24, that's correct.
12 to 24. And that 24 or 12 to 24 is going to get the 10-year long contract to train.
Yes,
right?
Well, they get the contract to train, but whether they all end up completing the training program's another story.
Yep.
And Mars One will do an astronaut intake
Yep.
every few years to open up for new candidates, which makes sense because
Yep.
you know, people's lives change, and some people may drop out of the training program for health reasons, personal reasons,
Yep.
who knows.
Yep.
And each year in the training program, there'll be one crew that is removed from the program
Right.
each year because they're underperforming.
Okay.
So it's
And that's a self-selecting process.
not that the selection committee will, and through a longer process, will make a decision each year about who is the most underperforming team
Got you.
and remove them from the training program.
Right.
So it's not a case of if you got your contract, congratulations, you're off to Mars.
Yep.
It's like, well, you have to stay motivated and you have to continue to learn, but not just as an individual, but as a team.
That's a team.
And it's going to drive collaboration within that team so that team succeeds.
Right, right.
Which is fantastic.
Exactly. And also the next step that going into is really about focusing on the team. So this is why I thought this will be a very interesting, discussion, because my team, the book is about building teams.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about what are they going to be looking for in that selection criteria? Because they're going to reduce the 100 down to 12 or 24,
Yes.
and that process is going to be focused on team selection. Right?
Indeed.
So what's going to happen in that criteria for selecting the team?
Absolutely looking for how well we work with others.
Right.
How do we operate within a team? What is our own behaviour within that team? And they're actually going to be looking at our behaviour not just within the days of the different team challenges that we're involved with, because the process will be the 100 of us are brought together, and in advance of that, we are self-organising into 10 diverse teams of 10.
Right.
And also reading and studying materials that we've been provided in advance, because we will be tested on those during the process too. And then in each day of the selection process, which will go for up to 5 days, the teams will go against each other in various challenges, technical challenges of some sort, and we'll have to just solve problems together as a group. So how do you solve problems? How do you deal with conflict? Because conflict doesn't have to be arguing.
Yep.
Conflict can be, you have this great idea, I have this great idea.
Yeah.
Both could work. How do you resolve that and come up with the best solution to move forward? So that's also a type of conflict, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't think about that as conflict when we think about in our work environment, as you say before. Often we think of conflict as clashing heads, but it doesn't have to be. It can actually be a positive conflict too, to find a better solution. So that's part of it too. How do you deal with that sort of conflict and others? As well as that aspect of your own self-awareness. Do you understand and know what your own strengths and weaknesses are?
The blind spots and all of that.
They're going to want to have a look to see how do we trust ourselves and each other in such a group as well. And how much do we draw from the diversity of the team? That's going to be so critical. Because if you had groupthink, if you had all of one particular crew was all male, for example, or all female, for example, we know through research that single gender crews are nowhere near as good at problem solving as mixed gender crews. So and continuing from that, diversity in other aspects as well adds to that problem solving capacity. It does mean there can be communication challenges to start with, because people hear and think in different ways, because there's different lenses of our history, and that's one of the other things they're looking for in the selection. How well do you communicate? And how do you understand each other?
Plus, also, I think what I heard was that it's not the male and the female, the diversity aspect. You've got the gender, the age, it's a whole cultural background. So that makes it quite unique then.
It does. It's really interesting. It's unique, and yet in some ways it really does reflect our workplace environments in many, many instances where we do see, especially gender differences, but also age differences. And in Australia, an extraordinary richness of cultural diversity too, which is wonderful to get those different perspectives from people's historical backgrounds and even different faiths as well. If people have a different way of viewing the world through their religious faith or spiritual thoughts or not. As well, so that brings another lens of different solutions to things. So I think it's fantastic.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the condition when you get there, right? Because from the little I know, there's no water, but there's sources. It's a lot of ice.
Yes.
There's no atmospheric pressure there.
Yes.
And oxygen is the biggest problem, right? Because there's no oxygen, right? It's carbon dioxide and monoxide.
Yes, indeed. But however, when you think about that, if you think about the chemical composition of carbon dioxide, you've got 2 oxygen molecules to every carbon molecule.
Yeah.
So actually, oxygen is the more plentiful molecule in the atmosphere. However, it's just bound to carbon. So NASA is sending up a research experiment to Mars to see can they mine the oxygen from the atmosphere.
I heard about that. That's So they have obviously sort of tested. They haven't still sent it there, right?
Not yet.
So is the idea then to actually have enough oxygen in the capsules, or it can't actually be in the atmosphere?
You're absolutely right. We won't be able to stand outside on Mars without a spacesuit on, because even though there is a significant amount of oxygen bound to carbon in the atmosphere, we can't breathe it.
Yeah.
And the atmospheric, the temperature is minus 55 on average, and it's really going to be the pressure is a bigger problem. The atmospheric pressure, it's so significantly much lower than it is here on Earth. It would be the conditions it would place on our bodies would be much more detrimental. We'd probably be dead within a few minutes because of that, not because of the oxygen, but because of that. But to produce oxygen, you're right, before you mentioned about the water, there isn't flowing water per se in lakes and rivers that we would envision here on this planet. But there is a lot that's bound up either in the soil or on the polar caps, the ice caps in the north and south poles. So to access that initial source is the key, and then once you've got that, it's just constant recycling of it, so that then you're energy efficient. Because otherwise, it's energy intensive to produce anything, even if there is oxygen or water or whatever there.
Right.
It's try and recycle it. It's the most efficient way of doing things.
And what's the theory so far about where you would actually live? Because there's what I understand, either in the capsules or there is a discussion about living underground and the caves.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and both are important considerations, both for the technology that will exist earlier on during the settlements period, but also in regards to making sure that the habitants are protected from radiation exposure, because that's one of the other big issues when it comes to the conditions for Mars. The planet is bombarded with radiation, so you can't be outside in very long at all without risk of obviously being affected by radiation. So in either instances, we'd have to live in above ground or in caves in such a way that would provide a lot of insulation. So the concept from Mars 1 is to live above ground using the pods or the landing modules with inflatables that are then covered with soil. And that soil provides, well, it's not soil really, because soil usually indicates organic matter, but the dirt from Mars, so that the regolith, that would be sufficient to provide insulation against radiation if it covers the living quarters. That would be probably the way things would start. I could envision over time that once the technology physically is on the planet, then the tunnelling could probably occur to produce underground caves.
And also, I mean, following you kind of the last couple of years, I've heard you've done some amazing things in terms of biohacking, doing some crazy stuff. I think you're living intentionally homeless. I
am.
Right? and this is all both physical and mental conditioning as well.
It is, indeed.
So I'd love to understand a couple of things. One is the mental preparation, because it's a mind-blowing task, right? And then the second part is, tell me a little bit about the biohacking you have done, because I know you've done a lot of cryotherapy, bone compression, and love to hear about what you've actually done with your eyesight, because I can get rid of these things, right? If you can tell me how to do that, that'll be fantastic.
Oh, gosh. I guess it started when I was first shortlisted back in December 2013, and that was I was obviously hopeful that I would progress in the selection process, but you never know until you get that email or whatever from whoever the organisations you've applied for a job for, and then it's like, okay, well this is very, very real now to me, and so I spent a lot of time looking in more detail at the health risks that astronauts face. I did consider that when I first applied, because I did a pros and cons kind of list to work out, well, what am I risking here? What am I giving up? What am I trading off to do this extraordinary thing? But then when it became, you're in the 1,058, go have this ream of medical tests done, I I thought, okay, well, I know I'm healthy for this planet, but is that going to be enough? Is that going to make me Mars ready? I don't think so. When I looked at the things that occur in space, we see that the massive loss of bone, muscle, we see vision impairment, we see hearing loss, sleep deprivation, the list of things, mental health, all of these things, just huge challenges that they face in living in space, or even for the short times that they do. And I thought, well, if I'm going to live the rest of my life on another planet, what does that mean for me, and how can I be a better me for that? And so I started having a look at all of those different elements and breaking them down to work out, all right, well, what's really happening there? Why does that occur? And then I read a lot of the medical literature, and in many instances it would talk about, well, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. But is that natural? You know, the research also suggests that over time, BMI, so our body mass index, has increased over time.
Right.
And so the average now, the range of what is normal is actually higher than what it used to be 10, 20, 30 years ago. So just because that's normal doesn't mean it's natural, doesn't mean it's healthy. No. So I started to have a look at what were recommendations and so forth, and I started to question them a lot more, like, well, where did that come from? All of the recommendations for calcium have come from a study with 81 people worldwide, and hardly any of them are me. So it's like, okay, I need to do a lot more N=1. What do I look like in this environment, and what do I need to look like for that environment? And I think about that when it comes to, I know you've been very focused on trying to find ways to develop high-performing teams. And the me within a team is really important, because if you can have a look at what your own strengths, weaknesses, etc. are today, but then try and see where you want that team to be, is that individual right for that? Are they ready for that? No, there's a growth that has to happen continually. You can't expect them to stay the same and get an extraordinary outcome for that team. It's not going to happen. So I looked at myself that way, and I started working on various aspects of my health to become that Dianne 2.0 who could be as Mars ready as possible. Of course, the bonus is I'm exceptionally healthy now for this planet, so it's a real plus.
So when you think about the Dianne 2.0, right? If you were to pick 2 or 3 characteristics that you would love to have there that you're currently developing, what would be the top things, whether it's physically or mentally in terms of strength?
Actually, it's not a particular characteristic of the health risks or the health gains I wish to achieve. It's actually more about my approach to continue to learn and challenge, and not just assume that what I'm doing or how I feel or whatever is necessarily the best. Like, for example, at the moment, one of the self-experiments I'm doing something I'm calling 3 months, 3 ways. Each month I've been doing a different diet to see how does my body really respond to it. So I had a full blood panel done, looking at a heck of a lot of different markers at the start beforehand, so baseline, if you don't measure it, how do you know it's changed? And then at the end of each month, and as well, I'm tracking my blood glucose. I've got a monitor attached to my arm that measures my blood glucose 24/7. So I know exactly what different things can do to stimulate what's going on within my bloodstream. So cortisol levels and other things which will elevate blood markers for glucose. I'm also tracking my sleep. Thank you, Aura.
I was actually looking at the Aura.
It's smaller. This is the new one. I just got the new one. I had the old one. Actually, I think last time we met, I had the old one, and it was a big chunky ring. I loved it though. It was like, everyone looked at it, cool ring. It's like, this is a sleep tracker.
I think I need a different one. This is too big.
So it's starting to put. So I've got a lot of data that I'm collecting, and while at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm doing an intensive strength training program each month as well, and with a coach to make sure that we're tweaking little things here and there, because I want to see how does my body respond to different things. I don't want to assume. When I used to be a runner, I know an intensive runner as well, Vajira. When I used to be a runner, I used to be of the mindset of, you have to carb load the night before, blah blah blah. And then I started questioning, well, why? Who said so? Why is that the case?
Yeah.
Does my body perform better like that?
Yeah.
And then I started to not do so and found that I was able to run 5 hours, no problems, no food, not necessary. And I still didn't, and I didn't eat 2 hours before, and I didn't eat for hours afterwards. It's like, well, I think that the dogma out there, this is what you should do, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's best for me.
Yeah.
So I'm assessing what's best for me.
Yeah.
How does my body respond to things? And that will help me make decisions that then improve things even better for myself. So that attitude, if you want to ask about, that's what I want to take with me to Mars.
So it's the attitude, and then, you know, to some extent it's the growth mindset that we talk about as well, right? Because that's necessary whether you're on Mars or actually here,
Absolutely.
right? It's how do you work with the others and adapt yourself as well.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And that allows you as well to question not just, oh, is this right for me or whatever, but it's also, it gives you that mindset about, oh, is this the best way we find a solution to this? Maybe there could be another way. We've always done it this way. Does it have to be that way?
Yeah.
So having that sort of mindset and attitude, I think will not just be fantastic for my health to be the best for a Martian mission, but then also for the team's solutions to difficult problems that we cannot even fathom at the moment, to be able to ask questions and try and seek to understand, does it have to be like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So tell me, what would be the first thing you want to do when you get there?
There's a lot of things I probably want to do, but this is going to be the most boring answer ever.
Yeah.
I think what I'll be having to do is nothing for a few days. I mean, we'll have spent...
So no social media?
No, I'll probably be a bit of that. But after 7.5 or 7 odd months of weightlessness, to then be in gravity for the first time in a long time, there'll have to be a period of actually acclimatization adjustment. So the body's going to be able to be functional to do the physical work that we'll have to do. And then, of course, I couldn't imagine us leaving the landing module until we've done a ream of checklist of okay, are we ready for this? Is that done? Does that work? And so forth. So it'll be a case of acclimatize and prepare, which is interesting. It made me think when I was, just when you asked that, and I was in my head thinking, what would you do? I'd love to do all this. I'd love to just get out there and do stuff. But it made me think about, when you form a new team at work to do an interesting and exciting project, there are people that just want to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
But you know what you need to spend the time doing to start with?
Yeah.
You need to acclimatise, you need to build the team and assess it, you need to plan, you need to make sure, do we have all the resources we need? Is it all operating? Okay, we've got a plan, let's go. Sounds a little boring.
Yeah, but it's a must for survival as well.
It's a must, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's actually start with once you actually get there, and I'm hoping and sort of, wishing you the very best for the next selection criteria. And then there's going to be 4 more joining every 2 years, right? And interestingly, when I spoke to a couple of my colleagues at work, some of their kids are actually asking, right, what advice can you actually give if somebody else wants to actually join the master, the program? So what advice have you got for anybody who wants to join the program?
Well, the first one would be, keep an eye out for intake for new astronaut candidates. I mean, I know Mars One are looking to put out a call for new candidates every few years, which is really important. We need to keep the pool of candidates fresh for potential new astronauts, and which is what NASA do all the time. But then, I mean, it's a long way away, potentially. I sometimes get asked by kids, what do I need to study? And I don't think it's a particular skill per se, because Mars One are going to train all of the astronauts to be multi-skilled, to be able to manage any sort of issue that comes up on Mars, because we can't just call an electrician or a plumber or an IT specialist. We've got to do all that ourselves.
I heard you're training to do welding as well now.
I did. I learned to weld when I realised that the early crews, a lot of their work would be around construction. I thought, I'm going to start to weld. So I learned to weld.
Laser? Or?
Yeah, laser. It was fun.
That's pretty good. I'd love to do that.
It was good fun. Anyway, so the technology that will be available in the future, it's a bit like trying to tell kids today, you need to study this for a job future. We don't know what it looks like yet. I mean, and this is what a lot of teachers often struggle with at school. They know that the job market for today's students is something that will be so much more automated. It will be service. There were so many different elements that we don't know what it was going to look like. How do you prepare kids today for a workforce of tomorrow that we have no idea what it's going to look like? It's the same sort of concept, I think. It's not about learning a particular skill or technology, although IT is going to be incredibly helpful, of course. I think it's more about learning how to learn. If you can learn how to learn, you can learn anything. It really can, if you're interested enough. Mars One will train us on whatever the technology is or whatever the skills are.
The curiosity and then the learning.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. Learn how to learn. So kids, if you want to go to Mars, learn how to learn and be healthy.
What are you going to miss about Earth?
Obviously the personal stuff like family and friends and stuff and butter. Because you can imagine there's not a lot of space in a spaceship for a cow. So I think dairy will become a thing of the past on another planet.
Are you off dairy now?
I do have a little bit. Mostly cow is out for me. I don't have a lot of cow except for butter and a little bit of cream. I'm more of a goat kind of person. I just prefer the flavour and the type of fat is different and so on. Anyway, it's better quality in the most part. So what would I miss? I think it's going to be the natural environment, Vajira. I mean, as somebody who runs, you would probably appreciate this. When I do exercise outside of when I run, I don't like to listen to music. I don't like to listen to podcasts. I want to hear and be in that environment. I want to hear the kookaburras as I run past the river, or the oars. Like in Melbourne, if I'm running along the Yarra, you hear the oars in the Yarra River with the rowers. That sort of stuff. To feel the sun on your skin, those earlier morning summer runs where the sun's coming up and it's going to be a scorcher of a day, and you start to feel your body temperature just increase gradually and gradually, that sort of stuff. If I get to go to Mars, if I'm lucky enough to be chosen, I'll never feel the sun on my skin again. I'll never hear those sorts of things again. It doesn't mean that we won't experience them in other ways. I think that virtual reality will be a way that we can connect with aspects of nature and of our humanity in other ways that we have here on Earth, but on Mars. And it's the sort of technology that they're looking to use and using now in aged care and so forth as well, to elderly people who then see images of their village back in Italy or whatever, and have a warmth and a connection to memories that they had. So really positive experiences, because they can never travel again, that sort of stuff. But it doesn't mean that it will be saddening. It'll be more reminiscing, and because I think that we'll be so enraptured with this extraordinary new planet, with this extraordinary family that we'll have spent 10 years training with and now living with and working with for the rest of our lives. So we'll be creating new environments and living new experiences. And that's like anything in life, isn't it? We can look back and hearken for the past, but that makes it harder to move forward, I think.
And also, I think, you really kind of, highlight a key point, which is, you will understand and actually appreciate what we have here.
Indeed.
But I was reading something, it'll be amazing how we can actually get that learning back here, because you're going to actually go there and then you're going to appreciate what we have, which a lot of us actually take for granted, right? The destructions that's actually happening, everything that's going on here. If you can somehow get that learning back here to say, hey, we've got an amazing planet here. How do we preserve what we've got? Because, you'll only see it when you go there, you're going to miss it, right?
Yes. And in fact, the astronauts that spend time on the space station today, they experience something, I think the term is like the Gaia sort of effect or whatever, where they look back in the planet from the space station at the portholes of the station, and they see the tiny, thin atmosphere around the planet, which is like the width. It's like having a rubber band around a basketball. That's the kind of width it is. It's so thin, and that preserves all of life on this planet. And so they come back to Earth after their first visits, in particular to space, so empowered and impassioned to want to change our behaviours here on.
Right? Technology is going to change so much in the next 10 years, right?
Indeed.
So will you take a laptop or will you take a mixed reality? Mixed reality,
virtual reality. It's funny. I mean, Mars One's concept is to send and use the technology that's already in existence, that's proven for each stage of the mission, because there's going to be at least 8 technical missions in advance of the first human mission in 2031. So they'll have proven the launch and landing capacity of those modules a number of times. What sort of technology will be within that for that personal computing? There's undoubtedly going to be some form of personal computing, whatever that will look like at that time. I suspect over time, whoever gets to go would definitely have virtual reality or mixed reality of some capacity as that technology becomes more proven.
That's a good one. You're not going to hear that one then.
No, I think we'll have soundscapes. The use of virtual reality to create environments that allow you to have soundscapes and colour. We even see just the changing. You look at what's happening in commercial flight these days. Qantas now have their long haul flight from Perth to London. An extraordinary number of hours, 17 hours in the air. And what they know and understand is that the light needs to change during that. So you see the light alters during the flight. Why? Because our body responds to different wavelengths of light and different colours of light. I mean, we know to reduce blue light at night, otherwise we don't sleep as well. We know we need exposure to different frequencies of red light in the morning and so on. So all these sorts of things need to be. So we have the capacity to use extraordinary technology, which is so simple as well, just light frequency. It'll be used undoubtedly to grow plants productively in the hydroponic system, variable LED frequencies. And that also gives us the capacity to manage aspects of our health too. So the sort of technology choices that Mars One will make will have to be ones that consider how functional and versatile is this item.
Right.
It grows plants, it improves human health. So those sorts of things, I mean, intelligent selection of the resources, which is no different to what we should be doing in our businesses, really, isn't it? Do we have 20 different devices to solve one problem? Sometimes it might be worth spending a bit more and having one or two super functioning items that are going to provide better outcomes. That are going to be used multi-purpose as well.
So you're actually living intentionally homeless.
I am. So funny term, I know.
What are you trying to at least test or understand by doing that? And what have you learned so far with that?
Well, by the term intentionally homeless is that I'm choosing to not have a home, and I've done this now for about 4 years. When a lease was expiring on an apartment I was living in Melbourne, it feels like forever ago now, decided not to renew it. Instead of decided I'm going to just live as I can, house sit permanently or sleep on a sofa bed or whatever it is for as long as I need to. And that's been ongoing for the last 4 years.
I want to know all these
secrets of my success. It's interesting when I saw that about 82% of male astronauts that return from the space station to Earth often have vision impairment. About 64% of female astronauts do. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. They don't exclude you from the Mars One mission if you require glasses, and same thing with NASA and other space agencies. That's fine. But I thought, well, that could still place a risk to not just me, but to any sort of mission if my vision gets worse in space, if it's not reversible in particular. So at the time I was wearing glasses. I needed them mostly to read on the computer, and that after long hours. I was studying with my PhD, and so constantly I was looking at screens. And towards the end of the day, it was always headaches, and so it's just easier to wear glasses. And then I thought, why am I? Once a question again do I need this? Why does this occur? How can I change this? So I looked at what was understood at that time of the research of why astronauts were having issues with vision impairment, and some was around pressure on the eyeball, flatten the back of the eye, so it changes focal length and stuff like that, and a few other potential reasons, including genetics or whatever. And then I had I did some more research into why our focal length changes over time. And of course, a lot of this is very much around muscular conditioning and tone as well. And so I started to work with, a different paradigm. Like, well, I do all of these things in weightlifting and so on to improve my muscular condition and tone, including stretching, including whatever else, and challenging my muscles in different motions to try and increase their strength and growth, and to not deteriorate in size as we age. Normally, people's muscle mass deteriorates, and not that I wish to be the outlier. I'm going to be that outlier. And I thought, well, do we have a similar thing happening with our eyes? Because we never look beyond the length of a screen or a phone or a book. Even in our offices, when we are told, we need to make sure we look up every hour and glance. We're still keeping our range of motion of that muscle that changes our focal length still very short. Because in nature, in our natural environment,
hunter-gatherer, we were actually doing that constantly, right?
Correct. And if you sit down on the beach and you relax, you truly relax, and you let your gaze just go gentle, you see so clearly in the distance. It's the distance that becomes the clearer part. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I need to start to reignite that muscular motion that we keep so short. Like if all I did was a bicep curl like this all the time, then nothing's going to happen. It's going to actually not grow at all. It's going to start to limit its capacity to do much. So I took the same approach and started to do essentially eye exercises and muscular exercises.
So what kind of exercises?
Oh gosh, if you look at things such as the Bates technique, you can look that up online. That provides a whole ream of different sorts of exercises depending upon the sort of condition you may have. But then I took things to another level as well and started to use a few more biohacking techniques too, such as cold therapy. Now we know that cryotherapy, for example, has been used very successfully to improve vision loss in infants who have had retinal detachment. So this is well proven in the literature. And I found that after doing a number of days of cryotherapy, my vision would be clearer. So I just regularly do that. As a monthly.
Really?
Yeah, I do cryotherapy monthly.
Because it's interesting, because I didn't actually know about that, because I've done cryotherapy after a couple of marathons for
muscle recovery,
and then that's fantastic. So it actually helps. So maybe I should continue.
There's a lot of benefits in cryotherapy. Absolutely. As you know, through my biohacking, I did a 10-day cryotherapy experiment, which once again, lots of metrics before and after and during. And as well as improvement in strength, in conditioning, I found much clearer vision at the end. I tested it using a proper, optometrist sort of vision test. I had good vision by then already, but it was interesting to see that it strengthened a tiny bit. But what I found was a remarkable one that I wasn't looking for, but it occurred. I tested it. Was cognitive function. I thought I was already relatively smart. Once again, there's that question, I think I'm good enough. I can open the door. It's all good. You think about a business each day. They open the door every day and they're getting money coming in every day. Everything's going well, right? But is that as well as it could be? I didn't realise that I could be smarter. I'd seen research with Olympic kayakers that showed that a 20-session, so 10 days, 20 sessions, 2 a day, of cryotherapy improved their cognitive function. And I was like, that's really interesting. And so I thought, well, it's one of the reasons why I set my protocol to be 10 days and 2 sessions a day, amongst other reasons. And I found that my cognitive scores, remarkably, they went from what was, 60, 70%, so pretty normal, above normal, to about 90% out of all of the hundreds of thousands of people who have ever done these cognitive function skills through the Cambridge group. And over 10 days. It was, and it maintained that afterwards, because I tested these afterwards as well. So it was really interesting seeing some of the outcomes of this sort of stuff. And it makes me think about the capacity for what is on Mars to be able to improve our health or manage conditions that we may deteriorate otherwise without other assistance, because Mars is cold. average temperature is minus 55.
Yeah, you're saying that.
It gets a heck of a lot colder than that.
I heard it like minus 80 as well. You know?
Oh, minus 150 odd in the polar regions.
Yeah.
So if we can use the conditions that are there in such a way that can have an effect that we wouldn't necessarily always think about, then that's phenomenal. It's one of the other reasons why I use cryotherapy as an exposure test for a number of different metrics, because it's a resource we will have on Mars. We will have the cold. That's a given. Controlling the exposure to it in such a way that's going to be functional for us for health benefits. I think that's one of the ways we'll be able to manage elements of our health that won't require us having to produce medicines that require resources from Earth when we don't necessarily have them. We've got the cold.
Yeah, and then you can use that. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Dianne, thank you very much for this amazing set of story. I've learned heaps every time I actually talk to you or write to you. I learned so many things, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
The next round is going to be happening next year.
Yep.
That's on the team selection criteria.
Yes, correct.
So hopefully next time we meet, you'll be in the last 24 or the 12, or 12 or 24, right?
Yes, that's right.
That'll be fantastic. So wish you all the very best.
Thanks so much.